Hey guys, Khadroth here, and today we're going to be going over BB DuBBai. Now, I did want to go over her a lot sooner than I've managed to here, so we are taking a day off stream to force me to, because I have had quite a bit on my schedule that has kind of prevented me from actually managing to get to this. The other problem with sort of BB DuBBai here especially is that she has a very sort of unique kit, and I wanted to kind of sit on it for a little while here and try to think of sort of the occasional odd uses of her and see kind of what I could come up with. Now, that being said, she does have a ton of potential, so we're going to be trying to go through this probably in still a rather fast manner. There's a lot to go over here, so again, try to bear with me. Now, BB DuBBai is obviously going to be our second banner summer SSR here for this JP summer event. And as a result of that, you can expect that she is not only going to be limited, but also probably not receive that many banners over time. You can probably look forward to her next banner being, again, either somehow tied in with a story or a main interlude sort of thing whenever they give it to us, because we know they plan to main interlude the current summer event, as well as Ordeal Call 3 once it all wraps up. So we might get one sooner than expected, but I think long term, you guys can basically expect BB DuBBai to keep getting banners roughly around summer every year. That being said, there may be years where she doesn't get one, so just again, keep that in the back of your head that, you know, in the future, she may not be as consistently available. So if you want her, probably the best time is going to be to get her now. Now, obviously, there's a lot of confusion over BB, given the fact that we have the original BB form, which is her welfare. We also have BB Summer, which is a 5-star AoE buster unit that came originally with Summer 3. And now we have BB DuBBai coming out here in Summer 9 years later that is a AoE arts-based Mooncancer with charge, but she's also got a second NP that is a support NP. So she's got a lot of potential, as we said originally there, and it's something we're going to have to go over. So let's go ahead and kind of dive right in. Let's talk about her stats here first off. So to begin with, you can already see that she doesn't have the best attack stat here. Remember, they are a Mooncancer, and Mooncancers just normally do not have a ton of attack power. They're not a super offensive class like, say, Avengers and stuff are. And as a result, though, we do see that she gets extremely high HP. This is very good for her tankiness, especially given the fact that you will see BB DuBBai has quite a bit of challenge applicability, and that's something that, again, we're going to go over later in the kit. Her attribute is Star, and she does have only 50% star absorption, which is the average for the class. She's only got 14.8 star generation, but she is an arts unit, so we kind of expect that it's going to be a little bit lower. And her NP charge attack rate here is only 0.33. This would be a concern, but she does have 50% charge in her kit, and we will talk about that on top of even more capability elsewhere. So again, you guys can see she does have the 3% standard NP charge defense here. She has dead on even, basically 0.5 death rate here for right on the average. And, oh no, sorry, that's 0.5. My bad there. That is actually extremely low death rate rather than really high, which is like her other forms. Sorry about that. And she also has chaotic good alignment here. Her gender is female, and again, we can see her basic traits here. She's got quite a bit. She's got divinity, intimate Elish nullification. She is a goddess servant, interestingly enough. Hominid servant, humanoid, immune to pigify. So don't try to be using Cersei against her. Mechanical, a servant, a summer mode servant, and super large. And if you're in stage 2, she's also levitating and space flightable servant. Definitely a lot of interesting stuff going on there. With regards to her deck, she is not a triple arts deck like we probably would hope her to be. Again, given the fact she is an arts unit, triple arts is really, really strong. But we do understand the fact that the devs are kind of trying to keep us away from triple arts here down the stretch. Still, you can see all of her hit counts are average or above. Again, really the only actual average one is her extra attack. Everything else is above average, especially the 2 quick cards that are 5 hit quick. is definitely a nice thing, but again, she doesn't necessarily have the writing traits. That's going to be something that, well, it still will be good and above what we would normally expect for her. It's not necessarily still going to be the best thing ever. Still, it is going to be a fairly solid lineup here with at least 4 cards that are going to be capable of generating Noble Phantasm quite well. And honestly, even with a Buster card, with it being 4 hit, you should have some capability there. The biggest issue is, again, going to be that just overall low NP charge rate there. Now let's go ahead and talk about the skills. So with regards to her skills, her first one here is going to be a charge to the party's arts and overall charge performance here. So you're going to be getting 20% arts up and 20% NP up for the entire party. This is in addition to her own 50% charge that we'll see on the third skill. So again, this is going to mean that DuBBai basically has the capability of having 70% charge locked into her kit, but only 20% for the party. Still, this is something I really want you guys to focus on, because remember, she is an AoE arts unit, but she's also got a support NP, and you can switch between them. So as a result, you need to start thinking about DuBBai as both a support and a damage dealer, not just a damage dealer. So the fact that these effects are party-wide, definitely a good thing. She's also going to grant the party preservation target buff except for herself for 3 turns, and you can see it's going to enable additional effects from the support NP that she has. So definitely a nice thing there. From here, it's also going to increase the NP damage and NP generation rate of any Mooncancer or living human allies for 3 turns by 30% each if you manage to lure this skill. And again, living human, obviously you guys know who the Mooncancers are, but living human are all of these servants as well. So there is a lot of potential synergy, say with Reigns and Waver for an additional support, or who knows, maybe some other type of damage dealer, maybe someone like, say, Shiki, who's a welfare, or Estrella, who are both single target arts units. They might be the beneficiary of having sort of extra buffs from DuBBai in that regard. So definitely another interesting skill here that she has. So now let's go look at the second one here, and you guys can see her second one is Lagrange Luxury EX. It's going to remove all enemies' buffs. This is absolutely fantastic. She just has a remove everybody type of move with their buffs. So it's definitely going to be a really nice buff strip. The issue with it that you're going to want to watch out for is, remember, you can't buff remove in a challenge environment if the buff is locked inside one of those white boxes. That is a usually fight specific gimmick, or break bar specific gimmick that's been bestowed to the enemy. So keep in mind you won't be able to remove those, but everything else is fair game. So obviously it's going to be really nice if you're trying to remove things like defensive skills. That is going to be something that might get in the way of you dealing damage to them. And certainly it can obviously remove restorative stuff, or again, even offensive stuff if the enemy is managing to really try to smack you around. From there, it's also going to reduce their attack for 1 turn by up to 100. So keep in mind, this will make an enemy, as long as it has no other external source of buffing, something that will allow it to do more damage, this is going to basically end up making the enemy deal 0 damage to you. But keep in mind, a lot of these types of enemies will get something, so just, again, pay attention and watch out for that sort of thing. It doesn't necessarily mean that all the time it will, especially if you're in a challenge environment. From there, it's also going to reduce the target's arts resistance for 3 turns. Sorry, all enemies, not just the target. And again, that is a 20% arts down. That's going to increase damage towards the enemy that's arts based, including from your NP. It's also going to increase your NP generation whenever you're hitting an enemy that has this. Just keep in mind that because this is a debuff, it's not going to be like an arts up where you would carry it to another wave if we're in a farming scenario. As a result, you're going to probably want to hold out on this skill until a turn 3 of a farming scenario, or maybe just in general in a sort of like challenge environment if you're worried about, say, the enemies changing up and stuff like that. So again, really, really good and useful with the multi-turn duration, but you're not going to be carrying this to another set of enemies. From here, she also inflicts a non-preservation target. So this is different than the one on the first skill. If you'll denote, that one was preservation. This one is non-preservation. And what this does is it's going to be sort of like Summer Kiara, where this is going to confer super effective damage modifier from BB DuBBai's AoE damage NP. So the first one helped the party for the support NP, and the second one here on the second skill increases your damage from the damage dealing NP. So again, that one's also not going to be carried with you, so something that you want to make sure that you are at least getting on the high value targets that you really want to deal a lot of damage to. It's also going to increase the critical star generation rate and critical damage of Mooncancer or living human allies. So again, another really nice thing there. And this one is 100% crit star generation and 30% crit damage. The interesting thing about this is this 100% crit star generation rate increase is kind of the equivalent of Caster Gill. So there is quite a bit of potential there for star generation that probably a lot of people will overlook. Doubly so since BB herself is a Mooncancer and will be the beneficiary of this effect. Now, we're going to go to the third skill, and you guys can see this is going to reduce her own skill cooldown by 1. I'll have a little bit more to say about this in a bit. Obviously, it's going to be nice in a challenge environment where you're going longer than 3 turns, potentially. But in a normal farming scenario, this cooldown will not be that useful, but we can talk about that a little bit more. Also, this is going to be the skill that charges BB DuBBai's NP by 50%, so definitely really nice there, combined with her first skill charging the party by 20%. This means BB DuBBai herself can get 70%, so definitely a really nice thing. The cooldown is on a 7-turn cooldown here at max rank, so not ideal, but it is what it is. And just to real quick here, kind of mention, this is also where we get the ability to change NP types. So BB DuBBai is default as an AoE arts NP. It's going to deal damage, and it's going to have that super effective modifier and other stuff potentially on it. Now, the thing to understand is this is going to work a lot like Summer Barghest's skill, where you have the option to change. You do not have to. So you're going to get that interface where you basically can choose to change the NP to support or leave it as is. Whatever you decide to do, it will lock that in for the next 3 turns. So just keep that in mind, that this is something that is going to, 1, obviously allow you to change, but 2, it will have an expiration. So if you switch BB DuBBai to a support NP, it will expire at the end of 3 turns. So you won't be able to infinitely keep her there unless you're doing some sort of shenanigans. Now, again, this one, as we mentioned, is on the 7-turn cooldown. We'll talk about that a little bit here in a bit. So now let's go look at the passive skills. She gets item construction C, magic resistance EX, which is definitely going to be nice there with the 25%. And then we start getting to some unique stuff for BB DuBBai. She gets future management A. This increases her own critical attack chance resistance by 20%. So again, just reducing the odds of an enemy landing a crit against you, and increase her own critical star absorption by 20%. So again, she's going to logically soak a lot more stars by having this on her. And then she also gets another one here called Human Order Assessment Attack B. This increases, and it's kind of weird here on fandom, but let me explain it to you. This increases her own attack damage against enemies that are evil aligned, or anybody that deals extra damage to good enemies. What do I mean by that? So again, let's take a look here. That's going to be these units. Anybody that has special damage towards somebody that has a good alignment, BB DuBBai is going to deal the extra 10% attack to them. So again, evil aligned enemies, anybody that has extra damage against good, and anybody that's not a servant, BB DuBBai will deal 10% more damage. So again, we're talking creatures, monsters, things like that. Units that are not servants, she'll also get 10% extra damage against. So just another nice modifier there, and that's going to help offset that lower attack power that she normally does have. And then we get sort of a inverse of that, where we get Human Order Assessment Defend, which increases her own defense by 20% against enemies that are lawful alignment, have anti-evil modifiers. So you're now looking at anybody that's anti-evil, she's going to be more resistant against them. And again, basically servant enemies. So she takes 20% less damage from servants. Definitely a nice tanky little aspect added to her, especially given how much HP that she has. She's also going to have Goddess Essence A here for some additional flat damage added, and it is a nice variant as it gives an additional 25% debuff resistance, which is going to be stacking with her already Magic Resist EX for a total of 50% debuff resist right there. Now, we could talk a lot about the appends. Obviously, there's going to be some standouts, and I actually think the biggest standout for BB DuBBai is going to be the skill reloading in her circumstances. And the reason for this is, even though BB DuBBai is an arts unit, BB DuBBai already has skill cooldown in her kit. So if you remember, her skills are actually 6, 6, and 7 turn cooldowns. So if we were to use her third skill on that, they would instead become 5, 5, and 6. And then if we were to use, again, something like skill reloading, it instead becomes 4, 4, and 5 across the board if you have them all lured. This is definitely nice and has a lot of potential. But if we start working in someone like Tamamo in with her, or again, something like the Atlas Academy Mystic Code, you can get these down beneath even the 3-turn margin, allowing you to double them up within a conventional farming setup. So there may be some applicability to having the 5th append here and allowing BB DuBBai to work with only 2 extra supports and kind of just work her own way through the node. So it's definitely something to consider. I'm not going to say it's going to be the strongest thing ever and that it's a must-have, but I do think this is probably going to be one of her better appends. Obviously, mana loading is always going to be useful, especially with an arts unit, but do keep in mind BB DuBBai has 70% charge in her kit. So when you start considering that, plus, the potential application of, like we said, with the third skill, or sorry, the 5th append there, of getting it all back again, I'm not sure that the mana loading is going to be the best option for her, but it certainly could be useful in a pinch, especially if you're just trying to get to that nice even 80% out of her. Maybe you just unlock the append and don't level it up. So again, totally up to you to determine how you want to do this, but I do think that's where some of the special considerations are. Her third skill here is anti-Mooncancer attack damage aptitude. She has a lot of beneficial effects in her kit, so you could find some synergy here, but to me, you're probably not going to care too much about this, and most of the time Mooncancer on Mooncancer violence isn't the way to go. So it is what it is, but I will say it is there as an option. To me, at that point, I'd probably rather go with the extra critical damage or the extra attack after, say, the 5th append, if that were me. Now, let's go ahead and let's talk about BB's NP. So you guys can see it's a 5-hit AoE Arts NP by default. And this is basically her own variant of CCC. It's going to increase her own damage against Sky and Star attribute enemies by 30% for 1 turn. This is a power modifier. How do we know? Because it's for 1 turn, rather than just the NP itself. So it activates first. This does mean that not only is the NP going to be the beneficiary of this, but also any additional carding that you do that turn could potentially also get increased by 30%. It's then going to deal damage to all enemies, which is obviously nice. But then after that, it's going to place an arts reduction, an arts resist down on them for 20% for 3 turns. So not before you deal the damage, unfortunately, but right after you deal the damage. Thus, any subsequent cards, or if you try to use another MP against the same set of targets, you're going to be getting even more NP gen, even more damage done. So definitely a nice thing to have. But remember, you're not going to be carrying it with you to another wave. Now, from here, you guys can see she has an overcharge effect that deals super effective modifier to anybody that has that effect from her second skill. That is the non-preservation target status. And again, it's 150% scales all the way up to 200%. So definitely a really, really nice thing. So now let's talk about the support NP. And I'm not going to have a ton to say about this NP because I think this is going to be one of those NPs that it's really just going to be very much in the eye of the beholder, in the heat of the moment type of deal. This is what I mean when I say BB DuBBai has a lot of potential. This support NP is rather solid, but it does kind of have comparisons and analogs that are already out there. So yes, it could be nice to have BB for this option, but no, you don't have to use BB for this support NP. What do I mean? Well, for starters, she increases party invincibility for 1 turn. She increases the party's debuff immunity for 1 turn. So really, really nice protection aspect here, but it's still only got the 1 turn duration. From here, it's also going to increase the party's NP damage for 3 turns, but this is the factor of your NP level. So depending on how many copies you roll, that's how much NP damage you're going to get here. It's worth mentioning that obviously someone like, say, Tamamo can also provide NP damage. So again, you do have another analog there, even with arts. But we can at least look at this and say, yes, this would combine very nicely with someone like, say, Oberon, who has the ability to boost NP damage sources. So it is something to be considered. Maybe you're just having BB DuBBai handle a wave or two and then convert to a different, support NP. And at that point, have her kind of fire off the support NP to help someone else out. But it's kind of an odd trade, and I'll explain that in a second. So she's going to overcharge her NP here, with the overcharge effect of her NP, she'll grant the allies basically NP gauge. And it's depending on who has the buff from her first skill. So keep in mind that the first skill is, again, more for her support NP. The second skill is more for her damage dealing NP. So anybody that has this buff is going to end up getting 30% all the way up to 50%, depending on the rank of overcharge of actual charge for the party. So really, really nice here, and there's a lot of applicability. But the reason that I said this has kind of a trade-off is because we're thinking about it just from the perspective of the NP damage and the charge here, not even the protection aspect. I think to really get the most use, you probably need all of this, but certainly if we're just thinking about it from these two aspects, these kind of offensive aspects, you're kind of looking at it from the sense of, well, yeah, the party's going to end up getting that 30% NP damage up, but I'm having to trade 50% charge from BB herself. What does that mean? It means that you ended up having to utilize the third skill, switch the NP to support, which also means that you ended up using the 50% charge in the process. It's the one thing I really don't like about her design is the fact that they paired the 50% charge with the NP swap. You do have the 3-turn duration on it, which is nice, but it naturally means that you're going to end up having to trade that 50% of BB DuBBai's for basically 30% on everybody else. Now, maybe you have an overcharge source, maybe you put it second in a chain, who knows? But either way, it's kind of just indicating you're trading 50% functionally for 60%. And one, you may not even care on who the other unit is that gets it. But in all fairness, I'm going to say, too, is the fact that, yeah, you might just be after this regardless for the protective aspects of it. So depending on how you want to look at this, this has a lot of potential. You could use it in multi-damage dealer setups. But I also feel like the majority of people will probably just sit there and just go, I don't care. I'm just going to end up using a damage dealer. So it is what it is. I think it's totally up to you guys as to how to use it. Obviously, you guys are going to find some interesting uses for it. And I do think it will have a lot of sort of flexibility as a thing. But remember, in order to get these benefits, you are having to use BB DuBBai's NP. So there is that sort of cost benefit to it. But again, I do think it's a really, really nice type of skill. So, well, not skill, ability that she has. It's just going to be something that you're going to have to be kind of, playing heads up with and look for opportunities to get the most out of it. Now, with all of that in mind, let's go ahead and let's take a look at BB DuBBai's refund numbers here. Okay, so basically BB DuBBai's refund is interesting because remember, we have all those arts downs. I'm only going to kind of talk to you about it, her under normal circumstance and her with basically her skill 2's arts down. So if we're talking 2 times Castoria, basically against 3 neutral targets, we are at that point looking at BB DuBBai with even 3 out of 15 hits of overkill, kind of achieving 68%. Now, that's not the best refund, but that's just normal. If you do have the skill 2 active on an enemy, which again, you're probably going to save that for wave 3, but it just depends. You have the option of using it early if you really desperately need the refund. you can get up to 74%. So again, you do see this ability to kind of wiggle the numbers around a little bit depending on the skill 2 activation. Needless to say, this is plenty. She will have enough to Black Grail loop. Kind of talking about the same sort of thing against 2 neutral enemies, you would be looking at only 41% in a normal scenario versus 45% if you do have the skill 2 breakdown on. Sorry, I actually took the zero overkill numbers. So this is 2 out of 10 overkill hits here, which is again just assuming the 1 overkill hit per enemy. So that is to say you killed them. So in this scenario, you're looking at 45% against 2 neutral enemies and 49% if you use skill 2. So you can kind of hit that 50% break even point still, but obviously this is not going to be the most ideal set of circumstances. Berserkers, it gets a little bit hairy, but honestly, the numbers are better than the 2 refund enemies, so I'm going to say you're still probably going to be okay. Now, we kind of mentioned she's a Black Grail looper. She does have buff removal, so I don't think I have too many craft essence recommendations to make for you guys. Anything kind of really works with BB. The more damage, the better, and I think that's kind of what we're going to recommend to you guys. So things like Black Grail, Angel's Song, Heaven's Feel, you name it. Those are going to be really, really solid options for you. And then with regard to our charge scenarios, let's go ahead and look at those. We got a ton for BB DuBBai here. So you can see the first one here is against neutral enemies, kind of using double Castoria and an Oberon right there for kind of that maximum damage output. This is going to be a Black Grail type of scenario. And you can see we don't really use the mana loading append here. And she kind of just ends up working as you manage to get back to that 50%. 57% right there. And then it's pretty easy to kind of just make do with everything else, and you kind of just coast right through. So you almost have too much refund in that scenario. Against 3 neutral enemies with one of the Castorias swapped out for a Proto Merlin. Again, same or similar type refund scenario, but what you end up with is a little bit less waste with regards to the actual charge numbers. And so it does kind of prove that you don't have to have a double Castoria setup for her to work. And then similarly right here with this next one, we end up with basically subbing out the Oberon for a Shu Fu. So not nearly as much brute force charge, but a little bit better refund numbers, allowing you to distribute the charge enough for it to work. And then against 2 neutral enemies, now, again, sorry, for that last one, you did have to have the mana loading appends. Just be careful. For 2 neutral enemies, you're now looking instead at Castorias here. And again, Oberon, you're really going to end up needing the sort of brute force there. This is also going to require you to use the skill 3 on wave 2. But remember, there's no real big penalty for that, so that's perfectly fine. The refund there only being 38% off the first wave, but then you kind of get the other Castoria charge skill with the NP gain on it. And so then it kind of smooths out to 45%, and then basically Oberon just kind of finishes it off right there. And then for the next one here, we have a Berserker type of setup. This one kind of just works with double Castoria and any 50% charger. So again, nothing too much to be concerned about. And if we want to use BB DuBBai, sort of with just something like a double Castoria and Fragment of 2004 Mystic Code, you can get the job done, but we do kind of recommend that 10% mana loading append just to kind of make it work. So again, coins are going to definitely be a concern for people here, but it is what it is. And similar type deal, we can do the Berserker scenario here with Shu Fu, just to kind of give you guys a little bit more of a look here, because I'm kind of hiding it myself. Here, let me actually turn myself off just so that you guys don't have to see me. So there you go. You can see, again, here's kind of the refund breakdown here of how it's supposed to work, and you can kind of make out kind of where all the charge is supposed to go. So, like I said, BB DuBBai definitely has a lot of scenarios that you can potentially use her in. And like I said, there is also the possibility of trying to mix in something like, say, the Atlas Mystic Code and kind of making stuff like that work. So I do think there's multiple options, though obviously something like that's not going to be as good for damage. It's going to be more about like just trying to make do with less. But let's go ahead and let's talk about BB DuBBai's damage. So now we can kind of see right here, we have her self buffs only damage. This is going to be BB DuBBai basically with like just her own buffs, no supports, no damage Cs, no mystic codes, nothing like that. So just her own damage in a neutral scenario, so not even effective. And you guys can see she's going to be kind of a little bit lackluster there normally, but then it is going to kind of scale up with additional MP levels. And then you have the Sky Star attribute from the NP, that power mod. And then again, if the enemy has the unprotected buff from the second skill, and then both, you're going to get even more. Now, this is, again, the right side over here is assuming that you have the 10% attack up buff against an enemy that's like, let's say, a non-servant or somebody that has effective damage against a good traded enemy. Any of those, and you're going to kind of get a little bit more of a boost to the numbers here. Okay, and so now with that out of the way, we can actually show you guys the proper damage. This is going to be BB DuBBai in an actual composition, still neutral numbers, but now we're including things like the Mystic Code, the supports, the Craft Essence, you name it. And you guys can see the first comp up top here is Double Casteria with Oberon and a level 100 Black Grail. The second one is the exact same, only now with the 10% passive. So just kind of looking at the top numbers here, again, you can see there, we get a huge damage spike for wave 3. Welcome to Oberon comps. And then obviously as we start working in some of the power mods, some of the super effective, the numbers get even better. And then certainly within P2 onward, the numbers are going to go even more insane. And then just kind of looking at the difference the 10% makes right here across the board, you do get to see at least a little bit of a bump up, but nothing too crazy. So obviously, if you can manage to find sort of that wheelhouse type enemy that she's really going to kick the butt of, that's going to be nice, but it's not going to make the hugest of differences. So it shouldn't be too big of a deal. Now let's go ahead and compare BB to some of her other contemporaries, particularly Summer BB. That is to say, BB DuBBai versus Year 3 Summer BB AoE Buster Unit. This is going to be Koyanskaya of Light, Oberon, a level 100 cranking with append 5. We've also got anti-man modifier here due to Koyan. And you can see, definitely solid numbers, but remember, obviously Summer BB's had some attention now, and it's definitely paid off for her. And we do have quite a bit more there with the man attribute, so again, I think you're going to see BB DuBBai not necessarily, burning everything down in terms of damage output. Still pretty solid, but you're obviously going to have quite a bit of contenders to her. So she's not going to be your damage queen in most circumstances because she's got a lot of conditionals that you really need to line up for some good damage. And then I think obviously the elephant in the room is going to be comparing her to Summer Kiara, and that's definitely going to be something to pay attention to, as this could be a double Casteria Oberon and Black Grail setup as well. We do have numbers in parentheses. This is for if the super effective modifier fails to land, because it is a debuff, and so you can have it where you can't end up landing it against an enemy because it is immune or it resists it. So again, you can see the difference that that's going to make. Basically, as long as it lands, yeah, we're looking at pretty comparable numbers to BB DuBBai. In fact, in a lot of circumstances, probably even more. But definitely, again, something to be concerned with. And obviously, we kind of need to show off Arcuid as well, since she is a recent beneficiary of the new 5th append. This is going to be a double Koyanskaya of Light, Oberon, level 100 Black Grail, Neo Plug Suit, and yes, also anti-man due to Koyan. And you can see, obviously, still going to kind of win in most scenarios against things like BB DuBBai. So that's where I'm going to say BB DuBBai's real strength is going to be in what she can do for the party. It's going to be in her versatility. It's not necessarily going to be in raw damage output. I do think BB DuBBai is going to be really strong in a challenge scenario. So you guys let me know what you feel about BB DuBBai, especially now that some of you have had some time to work with her. Let me know which Ascension is your favorite of the 2 that are currently out. Obviously, we're waiting on the 3rd from Story, but we'll definitely look forward to that. So again, I'm just curious as to what you guys' thoughts are. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys for the next one.